Rapid Transition Alliance contacted me to ask me if I could make some films about what we've learned coming out of lockdown in 2022. They were hugely ambitious. They wanted the films to be global in scale and importance. At first I thought I'd travel the world, cross the 7 seas and continents, but then I remembered one of the key messages from the Rapid Transition Alliance. We should be cutting any unnecessary travel, whether it's for business, leisure or commuting and the like. So rather, I think this should be set in my local area, the area that I know and love the best, Waltham Forest in North East London. My idea for this is quite simple. I'm going to do a 5-day tour of my borough and meet all sorts of amazing people who have interesting ideas on things that they've learned during lockdown and stuff that we can use going forward as things begin to reopen. But not before a spot of breakfast. But who am I, and why would you listen to me? Back in 2019, I must have caught Rapid Transition Alliance's eye when working with my partner Hilary. We blew up a van full of £1.2 million worth of high-interest debt, and then we started a project building our own power station on our suburban street in London.
A good idea.
It's an amazing thing. It can bring us into doing something good.
Yeah, we were all taking part in the plan. Yeah, exactly. With the cost of energy going up and up and up, like saving 40 or even 80% if you were also insulating on the bills, is like a big deal for people, isn't it? But despite having a history of being a filmmaker and a campaigner, I'm far from perfect. I use way too much plastic. I've not been procuring my food from sustainable sources either. On a daily basis, I've imported things from all 4 corners of the world.
They're basically...
It's definitely from far away.
They've travelled a long way. I mean, mostly they're from South America, so I'm surprised that's Israel.
And the badges on my fridge speak of voyages to far-flung lands. Places that pre-pandemic I would have visited almost without having thought about it. And the pandemic has left me larger than I was. And apart from walking my dogs, I don't do nearly enough exercise. And many of my clothes no longer fit. But now that lockdown is ending, I want to get my house in order. I remember how at the beginning of lockdown, the supermarket shelves were like totally empty and there was panic buying, and that mixed with Brexit, the supermarket bosses started saying that we'd never get the same amount of variety again as we had been used to. And there was a huge fear that the supply chains were going to break down, that basically we wouldn't get enough food coming in. And I think this kind of began to cause people to start reimagining where they get their food from and start to think, oh my goodness, yeah, it's true that things are coming in from all over the place. Hadn't even really been thinking about it. And so the local became more and more important. So I guess I need to start trying to think about how I swap one of these kind of bags, and for all its terrible connotations, for something with local produce. So today, we're off to meet a workers' co-op who grow their own food and have never been busier than during the pandemic.
contacted boroughs from Tower Hamlets up to Hertford with this vision to revitalise the fruit growing history of the Lee Valley. We asked for a plot of land, and it was a Borough of Waltham Forest that said, hey, we've got some pockets of land up in Chingford, derelict allotments, take them and see what you can do with them. That's how it began.
I'm a member of OrganicLea Co-op. We're a workers' co-op, focusing on food growing with the idea of changing the food system locally. It needs changing, and so we're going to try and do our bit for it.
The first soil was turned in OrganicLea's name in February 2001. That's when the project began, on a patch of ground that feels like the size of a postage stamp compared to where we are now and where we are here today.
You're at Hawkwood, our 12-acre market garden site in Chingford. We're surrounded by open forest, so this is on the kind of eastern edge of the site. It's got horticultural areas, including some orchard, some vineyard, the glass houses and the warehouse, and some amazing huge trees.
This is council land. The council ran a plant nursery here, and they were looking for another use for it. And we put a proposal to them that we would take it on as a community market garden and plant nursery. Eventually they agreed to give us a go. We seemed to be successful and we've been here ever since.
So you've got garlic planted here, just come through January. Things are starting to grow, and all this staging will soon be covered in seedlings, which will be going into the ground here later or on the rest of the site.
We were pretty certain that we could create it into a resource that is about food growing, a resource that's also about bringing people together, a resource that's also about reimagining what our cities can be when people connect and when people work together doing something meaningful and something productive. And this site has definitely held that vision and supported that vision. This land definitely does that.
What you see here is our veg box scheme. Every week we are packing and delivering about 1,000 bags of fruit and veg, some of which we grow here, but most of it comes from other farmers that we work with as close as possible. So that is within South East England, wider UK, but also obviously some things need to come from Europe. So it has to be organic, has to be as local as possible. The main thing is to actually support local farmers, supply into a market where there's a demand for it. Everyone gets paid the same hourly rate. There's about 24 members of the co-op at the moment, maybe another 10 or so other people that work for us on sessional work and occasional work. So it's 30 plus staff. It's not just growing fruit and veg and supplying it, it's about training people in horticulture, supporting people to set up their own organisations and co-ops and things like that. So it's quite a wide remit of things that we do. This is our classroom. We're an accredited training centre, so that's a large part of what we do is to try and encourage other people to grow food.
Did a level 1 last year, I did well, and now I'm looking forward for the level 2 that I'm going to start at the end of March.
I've done everything in Hawkwood. I've done gardening, now in the box pack. I helped Gary down the salad terrace, build a bed. I've done everything. I've done level 1, level 2 gardening as well.
The co-op even has volunteer bike mechanics on hand.
In order to fix the puncture, we need to get the wheel off. I'm a volunteer bike mechanic. I'm a volunteer at the Hawkwood Bike Space. Here we go. Fix the bikes for the volunteers and workers.
Haven't felt that good in ages.
First I soaked in apple cider vinegar, then I added some fennel. So I grew up in the area, I grew up in Waltham Forest. I started here as a youth worker, I grew into a growth facilitator / an outreach working. But I've also got skills in chefing, mental health. I just love to grow, innit? So that kind of played into what I was becoming.
Food's pretty important to everyone, and it was just great to find a bunch of people who wanted to try and do something, feed off each other and develop plans and ideas and actually then get on and do them because there was a bunch of us. I think that's part of the reason behind our success is that we've always included other people and it just enables things to develop.
I'm a full-time carer. I get some time off in the mornings, so I come down here. It's a good change of environment.
Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, it's lovely.
In the time since OrganicLea was founded, the issue around where your food comes from, what you're eating, how it's produced, there's so much more awareness of that, being part of a cultural shift and a movement, which is wonderful to be part of, something that feels it's growing, you know. At the same time, of course, global capitalism and that the food supply inherent in that has been continuing to grab land in the majority world to wipe out peasant agriculture and to hasten more industrial agriculture. So we've seen a growth of consciousness and movement on one hand and still the steamroll of capitalism going at the same time.
And we are actually at the forefront of a lot of change. You can't really belittle any small thing that you're doing to make that change. This place alone, for me, it just shows if you can, do.
The only way is for people to work together and figure out what they can do, I suppose, as individuals, but really in small groups and then maybe slightly larger groups. Then you kind of get that ripple effect and that kind of like amalgamation of effort that all adds up to hopefully something that is enough to get us out of it.
Today we've been up at OrganicLea. It's the first time I've ever visited.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been really moving. And like I never expected it to be so, what's the word for it? Like the scale of it. It's really like, wow, it's massive. And it's so inspiring, isn't it?